Namo Om Vishnu Vadaya Krishna Vishtai Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swam Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nivasisha Shunyavari Pashtatara Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gauravakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Okay, so I'm tempted to, because we've only just begun, you've just read two paragraphs, one for chapter 1 and one for chapter 2. I'm tempted just to go back and read chapter 1 again, the summary, but I try not to make much comments upon it. And chapter 2. Yeah? Does that sound okay? Just to go back? Because for me, I'm just opening this up and I'm quite curious as well to read again chapter 1. I mean, it was a whole week ago. So Kali Yuga memories. So it's good to just be reminded again. All right.
Yes, Hare Krishna, all good.
Hare Krishna, everyone can hear me. We're ready to go. Hare Krishna.
We can hear you.
Great. So, okay, let's just read. In chapter 1, we introduce bhakti as the subject of the book, offering an unadorned description of pure devotional service. Although bhakti is about practice and perfection, there is an intermediate stage, which is the preliminary phase of perfection, and it is called bhava. This exalted accomplishment is the goal of sadhana bhakti and the heartbeat of the serious practitioner. So, it's like, couldn't resist temptation but to comment something. Tried my best not to. But this is what the book's about, really. It's about the sadhana by which we can obtain the goal, which is bhava, okay? So it's the goal of our practice. Ecstatic devotion should be the urgent and immediate goal of every sadhaka. And also the final attainment he can expect in this life. Yeah. So in one sense, it's love. This bhava, it means that you're actually experiencing deep devotion in the heart, where it's various tastes to it. This exalted accomplishment, ecstatic devotion, the reason is that bhava bhakti is the preliminary stage of love of God, the seed of love of God. Yes, yeah. One for which a practitioner's body is suited, and one which then awards the spiritual body, which they can further cultivate love under the tutelage. So I keep looking at devotees coming in, you see, excuse me. That's why I get distracted. Okay. Of Krishna's eternal associates in a setting where Krishna's pastimes are concurrently manifest. So Krishna's pastimes in Palma Vrindavan, one goes there to develop in the different stages of prema. Moreover, the body that corresponds to the stage of bhava is eminently situated for cultivating loving devotion to its perfection. So that was chapter 1. Okay. If there's any questions or comments, please feel free to ask.
I think we forgot to say Srila Prabhupada prayers.
Yes, thank you. Namo Om Vishnu Bhattaya Krishna Vishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nivasisha Shunyavari Pashtatara Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare. Okay, chapter 2. So chapter 2 is a summary of the stage of devotion from faith to love, and an explanation of the two approaches to sadhana, regulated practice and spontaneous practice. Throughout the book, determinations are described in relation to bhakti and raga bhakti, with the understanding that in the ideal, the former is meant to gradually transform into the latter. If that transformation does not take place in practice, it can alternatively take place with the attainment of bhava. In order to highlight the prominence of pure devotion, also known as Swarup Siddhi Bhakti, this chapter also describes some impure forms of devotion, like Aropa Siddhi Bhakti. Impure devotion has its limited benefits, most significant of which is that it may give the practitioner access to pure devotees and their mode of pure worship. However, knowledge of impure devotion primarily serves the purpose of steering the sadhaka clear of this potentially spiritual hazard. The straight and effective path to Krishna is along the path of pure devotion. Okay, so we did read that last week, so I thought I'd just read that to get a context of where we left off. Okay, so I might comment a bit more now. Okay, so chapter 3. I made a few notes earlier on this. Okay, so chapter 3 studies how devotees are appreciated, namely according to their qualification for an attainment in devotion. Okay, so qualification. So devotees have reached a certain level of qualification. So that means a certain level of faith, knowledge, and taste. So devotees are considered accordingly, Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttam, according to their faith, knowledge, and taste. Okay, got that? And also there's qualification to attainment in love. Yeah, which is devotion, which it can also be termed according to beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Good. In both cases, there are 3 divisions to beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And of these, the intermediate is most suited to be a preacher. So that's Madhyam, okay? Yeah. And the chapter goes on to describe the qualities of the Kanishta, the Madhyam, and the Uttam. Yeah. Yet there are 2 kinds of Madhyamādhikaris: the practitioner who has risen to the stage of attainment, and a perfected devotee who has sublimated his ecstasy to embrace the qualities of a preacher. So sometimes Prabhupada is given as such an example of someone who's at the highest stage, but comes down. It's not quite a correct way to describe it. But by the desire of Krishna, he comes and preaches. Yeah. He is the true acharya. As for the beginner, if he neglects both the study of Srila Prabhupada's books and strict sadhana, he becomes entrenched in the introductory stage of devotion, where minimal Nam Sankirtan and faith in Krishna's deity are identified with Krishna consciousness. However, this religious life, while a preliminary stage of bhakti, should not be the proverbial spiritual rut in which a devotee becomes stuck, insomuch as elementary school is fine for a child but not for an adult. Okay, so I made a few notes here on this chapter. So Maharaj, also in this chapter, he describes the qualification for sadhana. So the qualification for regulative practice, and also the qualification for spontaneous practice. So 2 types of sadhana: Vaidhi sadhana and Raganuga sadhana. So now both, whatever stage one has reached, even if one is a spontaneous practitioner, they will keep themselves as a regulative devotee. So it's an internal affair. All right. Maharaj speaks about that. Then he speaks about the qualification for regulative devotion. So perhaps I'll ask a question here. What is it that characterize, or what is the qualification for regulative devotion? There's not so many here to begin with, so there's a question there.
Can you give more details a bit, like what exactly you mean?
Yeah, well, there's a certain regulative devotion is characterized by something specific.
Spontaneous love?
No, that's the other one. Regulative Vaidhi, when I say it, they don't recognize it. Yeah.
So you don't need to show.
Yeah,
It's
so
just
the qualification for regulative devotion is that it's inspired by scriptural injunction. So remember, so that's as opposed to spontaneous practice, where devotees inspired from their spiritual attainment within. So the qualification for regulative practice is dependent on the devotee's knowledge and faith in scripture. Right? So general practitioner, us Vaidhi Bhaktas, we're considered to be beginner, intermediate, or advanced according to our faith and knowledge in scripture. All right, so a Kanishta, his faith is pliable. It means they have weak faith. And their knowledge of scripture is meager, very small. Then you got the Madhyam, they got firm faith, but still their knowledge is incomplete. Yeah, they may meet someone who may be good at arguing, good at maybe charismatic in their presentation, and may, should we say, philosophically be in one sense, but someone who's at level of Madhyam, they have firm faith, so they're not swayed. Hare Krishna Chandravali, we're just speaking about chapter 3, some additional points. And then Uttam has a faith that is unshakable, and their knowledge in scripture is very deep. So this is the qualifications for that Maharaj speaks about for regulative devotion. Yeah, it's based on the depth of knowledge of scripture in the according faith. Okay, so that's the qualification for regulative devotion. It depends on one's knowledge of and faith in scripture. Right, then the other type of sadhana is, Maharaj speaks about, it is spontaneous sadhana, so raganuga sadhana. Now generally this is going to manifest, Maharaj speaks about it, it's generally going to manifest when someone is free of material contamination. His practice may be taken up at the stage of nishta, although it may be taken up at any stage, actually, but generally it's going to be taken up at the stage of nishta. So what's the qualification for this practice? It's an eagerness to serve Krishna in a pacific relationship.
Loving.
Yeah, that's also known as greed. So that's the qualification for Raganuga sadhana, is greed, lobha. The qualification for Vaidhi is knowledge in scripture. The qualification for Raganuga sadhana is greed. Also, it follows scripture as well. Doesn't mean it doesn't follow scripture. Yeah. So this lobha is also classified. Maharaj speaks of this in chapter 3. It's also classified to beginner, intermediate, and advanced. You understand? Yeah. So the same, but to a spontaneous practitioner. So in the beginning stages of Raganuga sadhana, one has an initial attraction for an associate of Krishna. So even though one is lacking real knowledge of the principles and details and mood of devotion, there's an initial attraction for a particular associate of Krishna. So that's, could say, the Kanishta, the beginner qualification for Raganuga sadhana. Yeah, this is all chapter 3. Okay, I'm just kind of fluffing it out a bit more. Marge has given a very synopsis of chapter 3, very dense, but so I'm just pulling it out a bit. Yeah. So the intermediate qualification is strong. I'm just looking at my notes here. A strong and mature attachment that is complemented with awareness of the nectar of devotion. So they're aware, so they have knowledge of the different aspects of rasa. So it's intermediate qualification. So that generally will be taken up at the stage of ruchi, okay, when someone has taste. So the topmost qualification is more mature greed. So greed is just getting more and more and more. So it's more mature greed. And the devotee is knowledgeable of aspects of his eternal relationship. That will manifest in the beginning at the stage of a Shakti. So this is chapter 3, okay? So in other words, Marge gives a kind of a summary. In both regulated and spontaneous devotion, each stage becomes a qualification for the next. All right. So each stage, you get to one stage, and then only when you get to that stage can you move to the next stage. So these different levels in Vaidhi sadhana, different levels of faith in and knowledge of scripture, and in spontaneous practice, different developments of greed. Yeah, which manifests at Nishta, Ruchi, and Shakti, and going up further. Yeah. So remember, this is Raganuga sadhana. So this one is not a perfected soul. One is not a perfected soul here. One is just practicing, but a specific type of practice. Any questions?
I was thinking, so at you're moving up stages, but you will be mixed to begin with, right? So from one stage to another, so you won't just completely change.
Yeah, that's generally, sometimes when we speak about stages, sometimes we envision it.
Yeah.
You completely step from once, but it's not. It's like the sun rising. It kind of rises gradually. It's not like you close your eyes and you open your eyes and the sun's high in the sky. No, there's a dawn, so it's a gradually awakening. So as one goes, one will gradually experience the symptoms of one specific stage, and one will get kind of insights into the next stage while still being at the lower stage. And as that insight gets deeper, then they become more situated in a higher stage, and then they will start to have insights into the next stage, like that. So it's you could say it's an organic, natural awakening, gradually. Yeah.
So
it's not like pressing a button from one stage to the next.
Yeah. I knew it's not going to be like that, but
Yeah.
I was thinking was then. No, I lost my thought. I'll ask you later when I rethink it.
Okay. And I think we've just at the end of the reading, the last chapter, we spoke a little. Marge spoke about the offenses, how it can take one down the stage, according on the severity of the offense. So that was discussed in the last chapter, right? So that was chapter 3, which is entitled. Let me just get which was entitled Qualification and Attainment. Okay. So chapter 4. So someone likes to read this, you could read this, Mamava Chandravali, chapter 4, beginning the different stages of sadhana on page 853.
Mhm. Is that chapter 4, different stages? 853, right?
Yeah.
The different stages of sadhana and of sadhakas are the subject of the 4th chapter. Rupa Goswami discloses that a bhava bhakta is both a sadhaka and the upper limit of the intermediate devotee. Since sadhana is about purification, chapter 4 also describes how the stages of bhakti from faith to love affect the spiritualization of the 2 aspects of self-identification, I and mine. The degree of spiritualization of these factors determines how well a devotee can be attentive in sadhana. That was going to be my question. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, of how well a devotee can be attentive in sadhana, specifically in Nam Bhajan. Since attentive Nam Sankirtan is the means by which a serious devotee can effectively pass through the stages of Nishtha, Ruchi, and Asakti, it is imperative that the practitioner properly align his heart to the needs that such purification effects. Surrender means to be willing to make those lifestyle adjustments that facilitates freedom from the contamination brought about by identifying with the gross material body. Krishna challenges the sadhana to be constantly endeavoring for perfection. And while such long-term effort may sound exhausting, the transcendentally uplifting nature of pure devotional service is invigorating and energizing. Bhakti properly performed is never tiring.
All right, that was chapter 4. Okay, so Marge given a synopsis. So I took some notes on this. So I just fluff it out a bit. So here so sadhakas and their spiritualization. That's the name of the chapter. So this is about the sadhakas. Generally, it's about the practitioners. Yeah. So Marge begins it by describing there's 3 that Vedic scriptures, the Vedas, every verse, every Vedic aphorism is generally divided into 3 subjects. 10 points for guessing what those 3 subjects are.
I, me, mine.
No. that was a good speculation.
What was it? What did you say? Ask.
So every verse, every Vedic scripture can be put into one of 3 subjects. When I say the first one, you will get the next 2.
Devotional
The one is Sambandha.
Abhidya Prayojana.
Yeah, got it. So you get 5 points for that.
Oh, 5 points. Can I remember that this week instead? Thank you.
Yeah. So I just read this part here. In the evolution of devotion culminating in love, faith is technically the qualification for devotional service. So in the beginning, you know that verse by Rupa Goswami, Ado Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangha, Bhajankriya Nishta Ruchi Bhakti Bhava Prema. Yeah. So he's speaking about that. So in the evolution of devotion, culminating in prema, faith is technically the qualification for devotional service, which inspires one to seek devotee association. Okay. Third stage of devotion, devotee becomes a true practitioner, bhajan kriya, by initiation, and commits himself to the cultivation of sadhana, so bhajan kriya. So purification is at the stage of nishta that purification becomes significant, momentum. Yeah, before that, because one is unsteady, so therefore the degree of purification is also not so all-pervading. Yeah, but when one is fixed, then the purification gains a lot of momentum. Yeah, and it purifies the impurities in the heart. So Maharaj spoke of these reactions to pious works. These are the anarthas in the heart. Sins, devotion wrongly performed, and offenses to the holy name. Yeah. Yeah, then he spoke of that, although we're speaking about cleansing of the heart, simultaneously, it must be accompanied by accumulation of spiritual assets. So we're not just after anartha nivritti. And then he quotes Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who spoke about artha pravritti. Right? So it's about devotional attainment. So we shouldn't just be focused on the anartha nivritti. It should be accompanied by devotional attainment. Yeah. So
Here, just a quick, here, I vaguely remember, is it when a devotee says, I'm not able to do this, I'm not qualified, I'm this, I'm that. So we should be looking at a positive way of doing, going forward. Is
yeah,
that way of saying that in the chapter? I can vaguely remember he was talking about things like that.
yeah. So in other words, how can I explain? Yeah. So the levels of advancement is generally termed according to the attainment of devotion. It's not the call. Does it make sense? Here, I'll just read it. We should note that while the path of perfection includes cleansing the heart, it must be accompanied by accumulation of spiritual assets, artha pravritti. Just we see that real stages of devotion are named not according to how purified we are, but according to our spiritual attainment. So therefore, it's called steadiness, taste, attachment, and ecstasy. So it's positive. Yeah, so it's approached that way. Yeah.
Yeah, not negative in a negative way.
Yeah, so it's not just Bhaktisiddhanta gave this lecture, and Maharaj quotes a part of that lecture, Artha Pravritti. Let me just go there and read it, just part of it. It's quite good. Hope you'll find it quite quickly. It's just,
I really remember.
this is chapter. It says it. Fine. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Whenever I want to find something quick, can never find it quick. Have I got the right chapter even? Excuse me.
Chapter 4.
Okay, I'm looking in the wrong chapter. Stay with us. Don't give up. Okay, here we are. Okay, this is from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. After anartha vritti comes artha pravritti, or the real world of service to the divine spiritual couple. If we do not know that this is the goal, all our efforts may become transformed into impersonalism. Anyone who's been chanting the holy names 15 or 20 years should take note of this, okay? A few of you here have been chanting that long. Our days pass in trying only for anartha nivritti, but artha pravritti is also necessary. Anartha nivritti is important, but it is necessary until artha pravritti has started. So devotional attainment. Yeah. When artha pravritti is present, then anartha pravritti becomes a secondary consideration, because artha pravritti becomes prominent. Simply becoming a scholar and instructing others is insufficient. It is necessary to go forward and become a practitioner oneself. And for that reason, it is also important to examine your own advancement on the path of non-duplicitous bhajan. All right? That's a bit more clear. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So then Maharaj said in this chapter, to the degree that one is attentive in chanting, to that degree, taste for the holy name awakens. Yeah. And to that degree also, all obstacles will be eradicated. So it's exactly to that degree that one is attentive, to that degree, taste in the holy name awakens, and obstacles are eradicated. Right? So keep that in mind tomorrow when you pick up your beads, you chant the holy name. Okay?
Isn't it the same in whatever devotional service you're practicing? Like whatever service you got, to the degree you are attentive in that service.
Yeah. When
You
it's
benefit.
yeah,
any
yeah,
service.
sorry. Yeah,
So-
we should be attentive to all the angas of bhakti that we practice. And it's considered, for instance, if you're inattentive while cooking, it's considered an offense to the holy name.
Uh-huh.
All right? Because they're all servants of the Yuga Dham, which is the holy name. So being attentive in chanting, also the same rule applies in any devotional practice. Yeah, we should be attentive. At least we should try to be attentive, and that's a good stage. Yeah. So then Maharaj spoke then in this chapter, chapter 4, Maharaj went on to describe, he described about the material contamination that blocks the devotee. And Baba Chandravali has already mentioned it. I think you might have seen that. It's spiritualization is to the extent that devotees become freed from concepts of I and mine. Okay, when this starts to become purified in the jiva, the concepts of I and mine, one becomes spiritualized. So then he mentioned the 5 stages through which spiritualization of bad habits takes place. So 5 stages which the purification or spiritualization of bad habits takes place. So 1 is partial. So this according to your attentiveness to the principles of bhakti, say in this context, chanting. So then it's just partial. So there's partial spiritualization. And it could be limited to just 1 or more habits, just like 1 or 2 bad habits. If one is inattentively chanting and is not practicing nicely sadhana bhakti, one may be struggling with 1 anatta for a whole lifetime, or for a long time. Yeah, wrestling with 1 particular obstacle due to inattentive practice. Yeah. So the next degree is pervasive, but it is partial. So there's partial spiritualization relating to many or all the bad habits. So that's to that degree you're chanting with attention and practicing the angas of bhakti with attention, then lots is getting purified. You're getting purified on all different levels. The next one is almost complete. So that means you've spiritual, the best part of all the bad habits is gone, is being spiritualized. Yeah. Then there's the next stage, 4, Maharaj speaks of completely, it means it's complete. You're purified of all bad habits. Then there's absolute eradication. So that means all bad habits with no chance of their coming back. With no chance of reoccurrence. Sounds nice. Yeah. All right. Okay, then he mentions it, and I found this interesting to read again. I remember going through this before. So when bhajan is unsteady, the meditation on Krishna is an occasional thing. And even then, it is mixed with mundane thoughts. You know, so you're chanting Hare Krishna, and you think of Krishna. Krishna may come into mind. Then you think of Donald Trump. Then you think of Biden. Then you think of news of the world. Then you think of the rubbish you got to take out because the rubbish collectors are coming. It's kind of yeah. So it's occasional.
Mind wandering.
Huh?
Mind wanders.
Yeah. So that's when your bhajan is unsteady. It's not so steady. So when it is steady, then remembrance is equally steady of Krishna. Yeah, you can maintain the meditation on Krishna. Yeah, but still there's traces or there's shadows of the mundane. Yeah, which continue to haunt the sadhaka. So at the stage of steadiness, you may, and the purity and the requisite purity of heart that comes through steadiness, then the ability to meditate on the sound of the holy name and Krishna is a bit more deeper, but still there's traces of the mundane, yeah, which may distract one. Now, when there's taste, one is free of distraction, yeah, and the meditation is long lasting, yeah. Hopefully we may have noticed that when we are getting a taste for the holy name, one of the characteristics is that we're very attentive because it's so tasty. Yeah, isn't it? We always, when we're not getting a taste, then we get distracted. But when there's taste there, because it's given you, yeah, it's spiritualizing you. It's giving you devotional nourishment, you could say. So, but still, it's not the stage of perfection. So, my Guru Maharaj was once speaking about this. So, like, how long can you go? How long can you maintain that chanting? An hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of chanting with attention. 10 minutes, 15 minutes before it begins to wane, half an hour. So hopefully as we advance in devotional service, we can happily get lost in the holy name for hours at a time. Yeah, I was hearing one story in regards to Raghunath Das. He's at stage of samadhi in his chanting. You may have heard this story. He was chanting the holy name, and Sankalpa Goswami would, as you know, he would regularly every day he would do parikram of Govardhan. So he would observe Raghunath Das. And one time he saw, this was in the hottest part of the day. And Raghunath was completely in samadhi, completely oblivious. Even the animals were taking shelter in the shade. But he was chanting the holy name. And Radharani was behind him holding a veil over his head. You heard this story. And then she saw Sankalpa Goswami, and she smiled, and then she disappeared. So then Sanatan kind of lovingly chastised Raghunath that we're supposed to serve Radharani, but you're causing her to serve you. This is not good. And another instance, Sanatana Goswami again was doing his parikram of Govardhan, and he saw Raghunath Das, who was chanting, his eyes closed, he's lost in the samadhi and the nectar of the holy name. And as a lion crawls out of the jungle, right next to him. And there's two versions of the story. There's one version that the lion just turned around and went the other way. Another version of the story that Krishna was there and he told the lion to go away. So Sanatana Goswami saw this. And again, he lovingly corrected Raghunath Das. And that's when he instructed that he should build a bhajan kutir. Before that time, the Goswamis would live under trees anywhere. They would just they wouldn't fall asleep, but they hardly slept. But if they would rest, it would be under trees, and they would do their bhajans in the open somewhere. But from that time on, when the villagers heard of that instruction from Sanatan, then they got together and they built Raghunath Das a bhajan kutir. And then the other Goswamis also had bhajan kutirs made. And they would do their bhajan. Yeah. Like that, So that's chanting. They're absorbed in chanting, stages of samadhi. Yeah. Right. And the ecstasy at bhava, when they meditate, the Lord actually appears in the heart. Yeah. And at prema, their meditation is such that they actually get the association of Krishna. Yeah. And they enter, Maharaj writes, they enter into an intense kind of meditation. With its intensity and ecstasies. Yeah. There's more he says about that, but that's just a synopsis. Okay, so that's chapter 4. Any questions or comments? I've got notes up to chapter 5 and a little bit for chapter 6, but let's read. You can read on Navachandravadi text going on.
Read from
In this book.
Yeah. In this book, we repeatedly emphasize the indispensable need to study Vaisnava scriptures, beginning with, but not limited to, Srila Prabhupada's books. Chapter 5 is the first essay on this subject, wherein we concentrate on why scripture emphasizes the need to know tattva, and also give many examples of living entities, even animals, who achieve perfection without even a modicum of spiritual understanding. That said, the scriptural perfection of an ignorant animal, for example, should not be an excuse for a human to neglect his God-given intelligence and ignore the real challenge before him, which is studying the basic truths of sadhana bhakti that he can apply for the attainment of bhava. Srila Prabhupada has already summarized the Vedas in easily understandable language, and a devotee cannot seriously be called his follower without respecting what his divine grace dedicated most of his time to, and which he refers to as his mission, presenting transcendental literature for the Vaisnava community.
Okay, thank you. So just a reflection back on the previous chapter, chapter 4. So what's being described here is, you could say, a real devote. In other words, a real. How to put it? So there's different types of devotional service. There's the devotion that we can do externally with the senses. I was mentioning. One devotee was asking a question about this. So you got Chesta Rupa, which means we're engaged in the senses in the Lord's service. Yeah. So we're doing different devotional activities, cooking, dressing, book distribution, whatever it may be. And that's serving the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yeah. But what's being spoken of here is more of attainment of called bhava rupa. So that's the real, you could say in one sense, that's a real, there we can really judge how much advancement we have made when we sit down and chant the holy name. Yeah. And that's something which will depends, but generally that's going to become more prominent the older we get. Yeah, because the older we get, then the less we can do. Okay. The older we get, the less we can do. I was speaking to one devotee recently. Where was it, the context? But it so happens that there's lots of younger devotees who are very eager to do the service that we're doing.
Yeah.
They're very eager. And, yeah, so I spoke to when I was at the manor and went to their Pujari volunteers thing. It was a nice event, you know. And I was speaking to Nanda Gopal, was it? Yeah, I knew, saying that they're having an issue where they got the younger devotees want to do the service of the older devotees, and the older devotees, of course, they don't want to move from their service, but it's causing a blockage, you know. So they're trying to kind of lovingly encourage the older devotees to give a bit of mercy out and give some, you know, like that. You know, it's a side point. But generally, we're going to find that physically speaking, even physically, generally, we're going to not be able to do as much as we used to do. Yeah. No, I'm just.
I feel that as you get older, I know you don't give your services a lot away, but you are beginning to feel, it's so nice to be peacefully sitting at home, chanting, reading.
Yeah, that's to be specific. Yeah.
I had like a family picnic or whatever in one family garden, but I didn't want to go. I was thinking, oh, and it's family, grandchildren, and I mean, forgive me, I shouldn't say this, but I was just thinking, I'm so happy sitting in my room, reading, chanting, hearing, sleeping in between.
Yeah, that's a natural development. You see, so that's a good example. It's a natural development of your stage of life, you know. Vanaprastha, then you're going to be less involved in the family affairs, you know, more concentrating on your bhajan. Now, definitely the service that we do while we're physically capable is going to go a long way to purifying our hearts so that we can sit down and do nice bhajan. Yeah. Some devotees find it a bit of a challenge if they haven't been engaged in serious sadhana, and then they come to retirement and they retire and they can't sit down and chant. They're too restless, you know, because they haven't been engaged, because in regulated, intense practice of sadhana. So that's why it goes a long way in all the services that we have done throughout our lifetime as a devotee. That will give us more if we've done the service nicely, then that will give us qualification for doing bhajan. As Prabhupada said, work now, samadhi later. But then you can have devotees in different moods as well. Like Prabhupada's mood, because he was the chariot of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So he didn't get much chance for the samadhi part. So his work was the samadhi. It was a manifestation of his ecstasy in spreading Krishna consciousness. So that was his samadhi. Yeah. Now that won't be for everyone. You know, some devotees, and we see senior devotees in our movement, quite a few of them are retiring. There's just last year, Radhanath Swami, Niranjana Swami, I think Devarita Swami.
No, Bhakti Mag Swami.
Yeah, they all retired from the GBC. Yeah, they stepped back, and there's a lot of new would-be GBCs are coming up. So let them do. So you see by example, some Vaishnava, some very senior devotees are doing like that. You know, so just keep this. So yeah, that just came to mind because you have this Chester Rupa and Bhava Rupa. But this is the real, this will be the most important thing as we're approaching our life's end, is our ability to be absorbed in the holy. And don't forget, Maharaj, I think he speaks about it next, in the next chapter. He speaks about that we shouldn't forget that Krishna's grace and mercy is there. Even though we might not come up to the grade, so to speak, if we are very sincere, then Krishna's going to help us. Yeah, there's one chapter we read. I remember that Maharaj was making quite a hard line and quite a describing what we need to attain perfection for quite intense sadhana. But then he was speaking about also if we're just sincere, then Krishna, yeyitam mam papadyante tam sativa pajamiham, yeah, and te samsatata yuktanam pajatam patibovakam. As they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Also, anantas chintayantam mam yejanapayapashate. Yeah, those who meditate upon me carry what they lack and preserve what they have. Yeah. All right. So that was just. So you just read about chapter 5. Is that right? Yeah. So we've got 7 minutes left. Any further questions on that? I've got a few notes on chapter 5.
We read chapter 5, didn't we? So
Yeah, but I've got a few notes on it. I took a few notes. So I just read,
do the notes so we can finish 5.
Yeah, so yeah, Marge quotes Vita Raga Bhaya Kroda. So being free from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me, taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me. So Maharaj is emphasizing this part. Become purified by knowledge of Krishna. And then you attain transcendental love for him. So this chapter is called the knowledge of sadhana. So in other words, he says freedom from bad habits and development of attachment to Krishna are dependent on knowledge of him. Yeah. Then, so knowledge is of 3 kinds. Again, Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojan. And he says this also includes knowledge. So in order to be purified, by Maharaj is emphasizing of knowledge of Krishna. So this chapter is about that. Yeah. So knowledge means also knowledge of the truths of bhakti, which we're speaking about now, the truths of love, the truths of bhava, the truth of rasa, and the truth of lila. Yeah, lila tattva, rasa tattva, bhava tattva, yeah, bhakti tattva. So the more knowledge we have of that, then we can become significantly, or then we can become attached to Krishna. Yeah. So Maharaj said, in short, to attain perfection through practice, we must remain inquisitive, insidious. That means insidious, is that? No, it's the wrong word. Let me just look at, that's a bad word, no? No, it's right, yeah. Proceeding in a gradual, subtle way. No, it's the wrong word. We must be very resolute. We must be very studious. Sorry, because I was using, for these notes, I used the automatic, it's called dictate. You can press and you speak and it works. AI type thing, and sometimes it gets it wrong. All right, so by association with devotees, one develops the desire to understand scripture. Yeah, so you're all associating together. So we're all associating together, and by these readings we're doing, we become desirous of understanding more, isn't it? Like you guys are always hungry to read more, this book, that book. That's because of the Sangha that we're in. So we got on a taste for it, you know? And then Raj brings up a question. what happens if devotees do not study the science of devotion and put learning into practice? So he explains here, without properly understanding the truth of devotional service, devotees will remain polluted by anarthas. Rather than develop an attraction to Krishna, they will be confined to bathing, to battling with the mind, senses, and the bad habits. Yeah, he describes, while it is the duty of the disciple of the spiritual master to instruct the disciple in knowledge, it is also the duty of the disciple to receive those instructions with faith. So a devotee must be qualified to receive instructions. So then he mentions, otherwise, the most qualified spiritual master is like an offering of ghee onto ashes. So we have to be qualified to receive those instructions. Yeah. Then this is the part I was mentioning here. Ultimately, all instructions come directly or indirectly from Krishna, who's the original guru. So he gives knowledge of himself and of devotion to him, so that devotee can put knowledge into practice. Again, te samsatata yuktanam pachatam buddhibhuvakam. Yeah. To those who serve me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Yeah. Now then he finishes off chapter 5 to establish, to give one faith in the process of bhakti. Sometimes scriptures describe extraordinary powers of bhakti. So they give examples of the benefits, even that someone who unknowingly, wrongly, or critically engages in devotion. Yeah, so the point here is we should not conclude that these exceptional circumstances are an alternative to the standard systematic accomplishment which we're speaking of. You follow that? For example, there was a pigeon who was chased around a temple and was killed by a hawk. Because he circumambulated the temple 3 times, the hawk killed the pigeon and the pigeon went to Vaikuntha. So hearing these things doesn't mean we should be lax. Thinking bhakti is so powerful that I don't really have to worry about all these details. I shouldn't worry about rasa tattva, lila tattva, different levels of bhajan, what is sambandha, what is abhidaya, what is prayojan. Because we heard in the scripture, this pigeon went back to Vaikuntha. Yeah. Then he gives an example of Gopakumar. As we're just reading now, that he didn't engage in sadhana. Yeah. But later he got instructions to actually attain perfection, to attain his perfectional goal. He was instructed to go back to Boma and engage to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah. And only then will he be qualified to attain his goal. Yeah. So knowledge, Bhagavatam means knowledge of rasa tattva, lila tattva, sambandha, abhidaya, and prayojan. Yeah. Oh. So let me just read this last part here. I really have to watch what this automatic typer does. Is yeah. So he quotes here, in this endeavor, there's no loss of diminution. Illumination can save one from the most dangerous type of fear. And this is the point I was making before. The key to progressive sadhana is sincerity of purpose. Yeah. And faith in the process. If these are there, bhakti will ensure its own fulfillment in the heart of a pure devotee. So sincerity of purpose and faith in the process. These are 2 most important things. Yeah. Okay, so that was chapter 5. Okay, let's pause there, and we're getting to chapter 6, part 2. So part 2 is the definition purpose of sadhana. Okay, so it begins with chapter 6. Okay, so let's see. I might do this. Let's see how it goes. It's quite a bit to kind of go into every chapter and try and. There's quite a lot is there, so I might just we might just keep it a little bit spontaneous next week, and just read through it, and we can discuss more because I've just been reading my notes here. But
Yeah.
it's good in one sense, but what do you?
Yeah.
We should just read through it, isn't it? Otherwise, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, because it might be too long.
Yeah, it takes too long. We've just done.
When you're saying it, I can recap on some things. I can remember some things.
Yeah.
But it's really,
Yeah, what I do is I might just go back in as we're reading it. I just kind of flick back in the pages
in between, yes.
and read a little bit so we can revisit that part, you know. But as far as the detail, I mean, that's one of my things. When I take notes, I just get carried away, and I take notes of everything because
Thing is
everything
that
is important.
it might, like, to some, it might be like too long
Yeah.
because we're not there at that level. But the thing is that the seeds are being planted within, and one day we will, oh, we did read that, we'll understand it. And so
Let's do that then. So let's pick up next. We'll just read from this last chapter,
yeah.
and there's only a few pages actually. Then any questions that come, we can discuss, and if needed, we can quickly look back, try to identify specific points. Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Hare Krishna. So we're on Bhagavad Gita tomorrow. Please join us if you can. Okay. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sankalpa Kaumudi ki jai.
Praise Murli Manora Prabhu ki
Lord,
jai.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram.
Hare Hare.